Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Mesechet Terumot. We're up to Perek Zayin Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnot should be Leilu Nishmat Neria ben Tzvedlana Aranbai v'Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden Amen. The Mishnah now is going to turn to a different topic. In Mishnayot, chapter 4, Mishnah 7 through chapter 5, Mishnah 9, the Mishnayot discussed the halacha of Terumot that became mixed with chulin. And we said, if there are less than 100 parts of chulin for each part of terumah, such a mixture, which we call meduma, may not be eaten by non-kohen. Here the Mishnah is going to discuss the halacha, the law, in a situation where we do not know if terumah became mixed into the chulin. In the Mishnah's first case, terumah fell into one of two boxes, one containing terumah and the other containing chulin, but we do not know which box it fell into. If it fell into the box containing terumah, so the status of the boxes remained the same. The terumah box would go to the kohen, and the regular box would be eaten by anybody. However, if it fell into the box of chulin, and the box does not contain a total of 101 times the terumah, the contents of that box will be prohibited to a non-kohen. So the Mishnah says, Shte kupot achat shel terumah v'achat shel chulin. If there are two boxes, one containing terumah and one containing chulin, shenafla se'at terumah letoch achat mehen, and the se'ah of terumah fell into one of them and became mixed with the produce in that box. And again, the se'ah we said is a volume measurement equal to approximately 2.2 to 3.8 gallons. Ve'en yadua le'ezeh mehen nafla, but it is not known into which of the boxes it fell. Harei ani omer letoch shel terumah nafla. The Mishnah says, the Tanna Kama writes, I can say that the terumah fell into the box of terumah, meaning we are allowed to assume that the terumah fell into the box of terumah. Therefore, the box of chulin remains permitted even if it contains less than 101 se'ah. And the Mefarshim explain, the Mishnah is discussing a case where any possible terumah obligation is only on a rabbinic level. For example, terumah in our times, which is only drabanan. So the rabbis treated such a case leniently, allowing us to assume that the terumah fell into the box of terumah. Therefore, both boxes stay the same. The box of chulin remains permitted to anybody, and the box of terumah remains permitted only to kohanim. Now, in the following case, instead of there being a doubt regarding terumah that fell into one of the boxes, the doubt is which box contains terumah and which contains chulin. Before, the boxes were labeled, and we didn't know which box the terumah fell into. Now, we don't know which box holds what. So the Mishnah says, En yadua ezuhi shel terumah ve'ezuhi shel chulin. If it is not known which box contains terumah and which box contains chulin, achal achat mehen. The halacha is like this. If this is all going to be according to Rabbi Meir, if a non-Kohen ate the contents of only one of the boxes, achal achat mehen, if he ate the contents of only one of the boxes, patur, he's exempt from paying a Kohen for the produce he ate, since it's not known whether he ate terumah or chulin. Like we saw in the previous Mishnayot, normally if a non-Kohen eats terumah by mistake, he has to repay the Kohen the amount of terumah that he ate, plus a fifth of the total amount. Here, however, he doesn't have to pay, and the Mefarshim explain, this is based on the general rule that whenever there's a doubt whether a person owes money to another person, he doesn't have to pay unless it's proven that he owes him. We call it hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. If you want to take money out of your friend's hands, you have to bring the proof, and you don't know which box he ate, which contents were in which box. So the Rabbi Meir said patur, he's exempt from paying the Kohen, and the second box of produce that remains must be treated as terumah because of the possibility that it may be terumah. Now, even though the first box no longer exists, the Mefarshim explain, we cannot assume that it contained the terumah, therefore we are still in doubt regarding the second box. But at the same time, since it may be chulin, is subject to the chala obligation if it's made into dough, even though terumah is not subject to the chala obligation. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Now, the Mefarshim explain, the Rav writes, chala is the portion of dough that is separated and given to a kohen. Dough of terumah is not subject to the chala obligation, but in our case, the dough must have chala separated from it because it might actually be chulin. So we're strict on both accounts for this one box. We don't let a regular person eat it because it might be terumah, but we also have to separate chala because it might be chulin. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi poter. Rabbi Yossi, however, says that the second box of produce is exempt from the chala obligation because since we are not sure if it is terumah or chulin, it has the same law as meduma, which is a mixture of terumah and chulin, where we are also not sure which produce is terumah. So just like meduma is not subject to chala, this box of produce is also not subject to chala. And the Mepharshim explain that the Gemara writes in Masechet Nida, page 46b to page 47a, that the leniency of Miduma regarding the Chala obligation is based on the fact that nowadays Chala is only Drabanan. So apparently this is the same basis for the ruling here as well, for Rabbi Yossi. Now the Mishnah teaches the halacha, what happens if both boxes were eaten? Achal acher et hashniya patur. If someone else ate the contents of the second box, he's also exempt from paying a kohen, because that box might have actually been the one that had the chulin. Now, even though we know that one of these two people ate terumah, neither of them can be required to pay, because we don't know who ate terumah and who ate chulin. And again, if you want to take money out of your friend's hands, you have to bring the proof. However, if one person ate the contents of both boxes, mishalem kaktana shebishtehen, he pays the value of the smaller of the two boxes, because again, the Mepharshim tell us, one of the boxes certainly contained terumah. Therefore, he has to pay the value of one of the boxes. Nevertheless, if the boxes were not the same size, we cannot require him to pay more than the value of the smaller box, since the larger box may have been the one containing the terumah, so he'll pay the smaller amount. And the Rav tells us, the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi in all these three cases of the Mishnah. The halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. That is in Rabotai of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav now discusses another situation where there are two boxes, one of Terumah and one of Chulin, and we don't know which box is which. Nafla achad men letocha Chulin. If it is not known which box contains terumah and which box contains chulin, and the contents of one of the boxes fell into chulin, and the final mixture is less than 101 times the amount that fell in, the halacha is like this: enah midamatan. It does not make the chulin miduma, a mixture of chulin and terumah, which is forbidden to one non-kohen, because we can say that it was chulin that fell inside. And the Mepharshim explain, normally, if terumah becomes mixed with chulin, the entire mixture cannot be eaten by a non-kohen unless there are 100 parts of chulin for each part of terumah. Here, however, the Mishnah is speaking of the where any possible terumah obligation was only drabanan, and therefore in a case where we don't know if it was chulin or terumah that fell in, the rabbis treated it leniently, allowing us to assume that it was chulin that fell in. Therefore, enam midamatan, it does not make the chulin miduma. The produce in the second box that did not fall in must be treated as terumah, v'chayevet b'chala, and again, while at the same time, we're going to see the words of Rabbi Meir, since it may be chulin, it is subject to the chulin, since it may be chulin, it is subject to the chala obligation, chayevet b'chala, if it is made into dough, Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Yossi poter, again, Rabbi Yossi exempts the produce in the second box from chala, because since we are not sure if it is terumah or chulin, we treat it as if it were a mixture of terumah and chulin, miduma, which is not subject to chala. If the contents of the second box fell into another place, meaning it became mixed into chulin, and the final mixture contains less than 100 times the amount that fell in, it also does not make it miduma, which is forbidden to a non-kohen, because the second box may have been the one containing the chulin. And the Mepharshim tell us, since we don't know which box contained terumah, both mixtures are permitted. Now, this is true only if the two boxes became mixed with chulin that belong to two different people. If they belong to the same person, we cannot say that they are both permitted, because we know that one of them contains terumah. Therefore, they would both be treated as though they contain terumah. The whole Mishnah's ruling of enam midamatan, if it fell into two boxes that belong to two separate people. Now, the Mishnah continues its discussion of a case where it's not known which of the box contains terumah and which one contains chulin, addressing a case where both boxes fell into one pile of chulin. Naflu shten lemakom echad. If the contents of both boxes fell into the same place, meaning they both became mixed with chulin, there's obviously you have terumah in the mixture. However, if the boxes that fell in were not the same size, we don't know how much terumah is in the mixture, because we don't know which box contained the terumah. Therefore, the Mishnah says they can cause it to be miduma only as much as the smaller of the two boxes. Meaning, if there is 100 times as much chulin as the contents of the smaller box, an amount of produce that is equal to the amount of produce that was in the smaller box is removed, we say you have to remove that amount of terumah, and the terumah would then be nullified. As the Rav tells us,